Do you mind if I talk for a while about something I love? About water and the ocean. Ever since I can remember anything at all, the light, the smell, the sound and motion of the sea has been pure magic. Even the mere intimation of its presence. Gulls flying a little way inland. The quality of light in the sky beyond hills which screen it from view. The lowing of foghorns in the night. If ever I have to get away from it all, and in the words of a Chinese poet, wash all the wrongs of life from my pores, there's simply nothing better than to climb out onto a rock and sit for hours with nothing in sight but sea and sky. Although the rhythm of the waves beats a kind of time, it's not clock or calendar time. It has no urgency. It's timeless time. Because I know I am listening to a rhythm which has been just the same for millions of years. And it takes you out of the world of relentlessly ticking clocks. Clocks, for some reason or other, always seem to be marching. And armies never march to anything but doom. But there's no marching rhythm in the motion of waves. It harmonizes with the breath. It does not count our days. Its pulse is not in the stingy spirit of measuring, of marking out how much still remains. It's the breathing of eternity. Especially early in the morning and towards evening, when the distinction of sky and water becomes uncertain, when the whole of space becomes opalescent, a sort of pearly luminous grey, and the rising or setting moon is straw yellow. Blessed with the white cries of gulls, and with the patterns of masts and ropes and boats at anchor, which put me in mind of landfalls a long way away, and of all the voyages of which one has dreamed. But under the surface of both sky and water, there's the grim business of praying. Men and birds against fish, fish against fish. The tortuous process of life continuing by the painful transformation of one form into another. To creatures who don't anticipate and reflect imaginatively upon this holocaust of eating and being eaten, it's perhaps not so terrible. But poor man, skillful beyond all other animals, by being able to think in time and knowing the future, he dies before he's dead, he shrinks from the shark's teeth before they bite him. He dreads the alien germ long, long before its banquet begins. Here is a gull that has picked a crab from a tide pool. Sprawled now upon the sand, the crab shrinks from the walls of its shell, resounding to the tap, tap, tap of the gull's beak. Who's that knocking at my door? I suppose the shell of the crab, the clam or the mussel, is the boundary of its universe. To put ourselves in their position, we should have to imagine a knocking sound, louder and louder, that doesn't come from anywhere in particular, from the door or the walls or the ceiling or the floor. Think of a knocking that comes from everywhere, that beats against the boundaries of space and consciousness, that comes as the intrusion of an utterly unknown dimension into our own familiar world. Let me in. Let me in. Surrender to this agony, and you will be transformed into me. Dying to yourself, you will become alive as me. There's no way of getting around it, is there? The gull isn't rapacious or greedy. It's just that his being alive at all is the same thing as eating crabs. Seabirds are transformations of fish. Men are transformations of wheat, chickens, and steers. To object to this inseparability of pleasure and pain, life and death, is simply to object to existence. But of course, we cannot help objecting when the time comes. Objecting to pain is pain. So far as we know, the gull and the fish don't philosophize. They enjoy life when they're eating it and hate it when being eaten. They don't reflect upon the process as a whole and say how rough it is that we have to work so hard for a living, or it's just hell having to wash out all the time for those gulls. I'm sure that in their world, this is something that just goes along with life, like having eyes or feet. But man, with his astonishing ability to stand aside from himself and think about himself, in short, to comment on life, man has done something which confuses his own existence down to its roots. Perhaps the ghastly mistake was just that step in man's evolution, which made it possible for him to comment, to reflect upon life as a whole. In being able to stand aside from life and think about it, he put himself outside it and found it alien. Perhaps thinking about the world and objecting to its whole principle are simply two aspects of the same mechanism. But aren't there also times when we speak of something that we know as a subject? The subject of this book, the subject I am now studying. Would it be possible to subject to life instead of objecting to it? Now, if the gulls and the fish don't philosophize, they have no consciousness of life being either good as a whole or bad as a whole. So when we philosophize and pity the poor fish, that's just our problem. From its own standpoint, the world of animals and insects doesn't find itself problematic at all. There's not the slightest evidence to suggest it. I'm quite sure they don't lecture each other about their duties, or worry about where they're going when they're dead. Isn't it then rather an enormous relief for us men to see that the plant and animal world is no problem to itself, and that we are wasting intellectual energy in making moral judgments about it? We seem to feel that the thing which knows that it knows is one's essential self. Our personal identity is entirely on the side of the commentator. I think our difficulty is that our consciousness is too superficial, as if all our sensation were in the tips of the fingers and not in the palm. Are we misled by the fact that we move freely on the earth and aren't rooted to it in the same way as trees to the ground and fingers to the hand? Now we know that the atom, molecule, cell of any particular organism is what it is by virtue of its place and its membership in the pattern of the whole. So I think this is why I love the ocean. It's the most difficult part of nature to mess up with emblems and symptoms of man's dissociated consciousness. It's an environment in which the awareness of our roots can awaken, in which space, so real because of the light and color, can be seen to be joining things instead of separating. And I've just discovered that knocking on the wall of space and consciousness was my own heart beating.